Hey everyone, it's Mary Brownlee, licensed professional counselor. Today the wind is a-blowing and the hint of fall is in the air. And as we get closer to holiday season, oh boy, does that bring up a lot of distress around family gatherings, narcissistic and abusive family members' behavior, and having to put on a fake mask just to get through the holidays if you are still in contact with your family of origin. Holidays should be a time of happiness, but as we know, if you have a narcissistic or abusive family system, they are only stressful, not fun and enjoyable. So today we're going to talk about 7 ways to get through the holidays if you are still in contact with your narcissistic family, as well as 7 ways to manage if you are not in contact with your narcissistic family. So there are 2 different scenarios, but there still is a level of coping and managing for both scenarios. So I'll talk a little bit more about that today in the video, and I hope you guys enjoy. Please like, subscribe, feel free to leave a comment. I'm loving all of your comments so far. They've really been very helpful, your feedback, and also given me some great new ideas like this video. So thank you to the viewer who had a question about, hey, how do you handle family gatherings and holidays when you have a narcissistic family? So that's what we're talking about today. So without further ado, let's get started. Hey everyone, it's Mary Brownlee, licensed professional counselor. Today we're going to go over how we can maintain our sanity and safety and mental health during the upcoming holidays, which are fast approaching at this rate if we come from a narcissistic or dysfunctional family system. But first, before we do that, let's go ahead and take a look at what a healthy family should look like during the holidays. And now let's take a look at what our reality is if we come from our crazy-making families. We're going to go over 2 different ways that we can maintain our sanity. The first is tips and tricks to remain sane if you are in contact with your family still, and also a separate set of tips to maintain your sanity and well-being if you are no longer in contact with your family. So I'll be going over both of these scenarios in the next slides. All right, fall has chased me back inside because that wind is pretty darn crazy today. We have a red flag warning up here, and that got me thinking, too bad the Weather Channel wouldn't put out a red flag warning for holidays and the narcissists so we could be more prepared, right? Anyways, number 1, setting realistic expectations. So around the holidays, a lot of us are more nostalgic at this time. Our heart is a little bit open. We get kind of those false hopes again going more, at a higher level of, well, maybe this year will be different. Maybe, my family will actually be loving and kind this year. We'll have an enjoyable get together. Yeah, so tamper those expectations. If you notice those start back up, it's usually our unrealistic expectations that kind of set us up for quite a bit of emotional pain. So it's better to just kind of go in there with realistic expectations. Like, you know what? It's been level 10 crazy for 20 plus years now. I'm not going to expect it to be any different. And I'm going to do a couple of the following things we'll talk about in the next slides to keep myself safe and have an exit strategy if needed. So yeah, realistic expectations. Make sure to keep those in place during the stressful holidays. Number 2, don't engage in arguments or conflict with narcissistic or abusive family members. Gray rock is a technique that's very helpful if you're trying to maintain your emotional safety with a narcissist or a disordered person. And essentially, gray rock is just making yourself as boring and uninviting as possible in terms of the narcissist or the disordered person finding you boring, in other words. So you're like a gray rock on the ground, just nondescript gray. You just lay there on the ground, so to speak, not at all interacting with the environment around you, and there's no emotional responses, so to speak, and you're pretty boring, basically. So gray rock allows us to be around disordered individuals, but without being drawn into the conflict. And so some of the gray rock responses that you might try, say if the disordered person attempts to, maybe they start up criticizing you again like they typically do, or saying their snide little comments and laughing at you, or whatever they do, or in the intrusive questions that are none of their business, for example. You're just going to get them very short answers with no details or descriptions. So you're not going to go into detail. You're not going to share personal information about yourself. You might say things like, oh yeah, oh, I can see that. Oh, I don't know about that. So you get the picture. It's a very kind of short, nondescript answers. Smile and nod, I like to call it. And again, stick to surface topics. And if they try to bait you, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. If they throw that fish hook out there with some bait on it and they're hoping you'll respond and get emotionally engaged, you just don't. You just smile and nod. Smile and nod. Oh, that's nice. Okay. Well, I'm going to go help Grandpa carve the turkey. You get the picture. Number 3, have an exit plan on the ready, should you need to escape at a quick pace if the gathering gets a little too stressful or crazy or abusive. You could even, if you have a friend or another family member you trust that's with you, you could even have like a safe word like bananas or something like that, where the two of you mutually understand, like, okay, it's time to go now. You can leave with maybe an excuse that sounds plausible, something like, well, I got to get up and go to work early tomorrow. So, it was a great seeing everybody. See you next year. Bye. Or something like, oh, we have another party to attend to right after this one. But it was great seeing everybody, and take care, so something like that, if you want to kind of get out of there gracefully without it being obvious that you want to spend as little of your time as possible with them. Number 4, this is the observe, don't absorb technique. And basically what that means is I want you to pretend that you're a scientist in the wild, studying maybe a local monkey troop that is in the nearby forest, for example. And you're sitting there with your notepad and you're writing your notes, like your natural observations of the monkey troop, okay? So obviously we aren't doing this for real in front of our family members, although that would be funny. Anyways, I get distracted sometimes. But yes, so essentially in your mind, you're sitting there and you're observing their crazy making behaviors, but you're not getting emotionally pulled into the drama because you're a scientist. And this is what scientists do. They stay calm and composed and they study the animals around them. So you might like mentally think to yourself, if you have a sense of humor and you kind of tend towards the dark humor, like I do, a lot of trauma survivors, we have the dark humor. You might, think to yourself something like, and here we observe the matriarch of the family eviscerating the young monkey's self-worth around her, in your famous like nature narrative, narrator type of voice, So yeah, if that helps you kind of emotionally distance yourself from the craziness around you, feel free to use this technique. But yeah, you're essentially just completely remaining emotionally detached. You're not getting sucked into the drama and conflict. And you can think to yourself things like, well, I am observing disordered behaviors. Ah, look, there's blame shifting. Ah, there's Darvo. Ah, And so if you're, labeling some of the disordered behaviors that you're seeing too, that kind of helps you stay emotionally removed and that you're not a part of the chaos that's around you. So yeah, I hope this one helps. All right, the next one is boundaries. So if you do happen to be there and somebody does some sort of personal attack or they start to criticize you or put you down or whatever it might be, you are entitled to try to set a boundary. Now, the caveat being not every person will react well to boundary setting. So I don't want you to do this carte blanche with a dangerous abusive person that might really start to like rail in on you or God forbid physically assault you or anything. So use your best judgment, right? Only try to set a boundary with somebody that at the very least is not going to physically assault you, for goodness sake. But yeah, it might look something like, hey, please don't say that to me. I find that really hurtful, or, that's inappropriate. You could try this, but as we know, with highly disordered people, oftentimes boundary setting is not very successful. It kind of ups the narcissist or the abuser's bad behaviors. So yeah, use your best judgment. But there are there's also additional like gray rock responses that are kind of helpful too when people say inappropriate things that you could try as well. Things like looking confused and going, I'm sorry, I don't get it. Like play stupid basically. So if they say something really rude, like, oh God, you look like you've gained 15 pounds. You could say something like, what? Huh? What's your point? So you could try a little bit of pushback in that way as well. Or something like, well, if you say so. That's kind of more of a neutral response. Or heck, if they are like, oh, you look like you've gained 15 pounds, you could say something like, yes. And just kind of smile and nod. And then just watch them kind of get uncomfortable. Like you're not falling for the bait, right? You're remaining emotionally composed and just not engaging with them. And you're not redirecting things back onto them. Oh, well, you look like you've gained 20 pounds. You're not going down that rabbit hole either. Or you could say something like, well, you're entitled to your opinion. That's another kind of neutral response to some sort of criticism or nasty comment. Or, something kind of more neutral, like, well, that's not very nice. Yeah, imagine somebody saying, oh, you look like you've gotten fat. Well, that's not very nice. Yeah, it's not, right? So it kind of, it's, you're protecting yourself, but without further engaging in the altercation, the verbal altercation that they want to get into. Number 6 is taking somebody you really trust or can depend upon who understands the dynamics in your family, maybe somebody you've been able to confide in. Maybe it's a colleague, maybe it's, just a best friend, or maybe it's a neutral family member, for example, that's not involved in the drama, that understands as well, but somebody you trust, basically. Take them to the function with you, because the reality is narcissists and abusers are less likely to target you if they know that there's a neutral third party watching or, is aware of what's going on, right? Because narcissists are all about abusing behind closed doors, but putting on the false mask in front of others, especially others they don't know, right? They're going to be on their best behavior. So this is where you can use that to your advantage of, hey, I'm going to take my best friend with me, or my work colleague who's like a best friend, and watch them all of a sudden be on their best behavior, right? Because God forbid this neutral third party observe them actually do what they do. Goes to show they do know what they're doing, right? They do know it's wrong, because why else would they just stop abusing you in front of neutral third parties? Interesting, right? All right, number 7 is the last tip here. If you plan on still being in contact and spending time with crazy making family members. Number 7 is pretty simple. It's just focus on the other members at the gathering, right? Go sit by your cousins or go sit by members that you know at least are not abusive and are not going to make your life absolutely miserable while you're there. And yeah, really focus on them, ask them questions, just try to be on the other side of the room as the abuser. Just stay away from them at the family function if you're able to. All right, tip number 1, if you are no contact with your family of origin during the holidays. I also am no contact with my family of origin at this point. And the thing that helped me the most, I think, was to build new traditions. So I have 2 kids, I'm married, thank goodness. I think it would be a little more difficult if I didn't have my own little family. So if you don't have your own little family, use your friends. Okay, this is about creating new traditions with new people in our life who do love us and are good for us. All right. So every year, for example, we come up north when it's cold out and there's possibility of snow on the ground, and we really enjoy ourselves more in nature. For example, I love cooking a wonderful feast myself. We play games, my kids and I and my husband, and we just really enjoy ourselves. It's like quality time where the 4 of us are just cooking good food, laughing, playing games, family movie night, etc. And indeed, quite frankly, it is so amazing how your nervous system quickly adapts and recognizes how beautiful it is that you finally feel safe and you're doing something that's deeply fulfilling and meaningful to you. And you end up actually having fun. So instead of the holidays being like level 10 stressful and where you feel like you need a holiday after your holiday just to like recuperate, right? It's not like that anymore. You really do end up being refreshed. So create your own traditions, whatever those look like, and really make this time for you to rest, to rejuvenate, self-care, do things that you love. This is a time for you finally. It's beautiful. And believe you me, your nervous system will quickly begin to thank you for no longer having to go into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, that fight or flight response every single holiday season. So it is possible to create new meaningful traditions. So that's the good news. Number 2, it's okay to grieve. And it's okay to feel mixed emotions around the holidays. I want to normalize this. Both myself and most of my clients who inevitably are no contact with their families of origin experience grief around the holidays. So even though sometimes people misunderstand this, even though, say, your family is abusive and never really loved you, for example, it doesn't mean that we still don't love and miss them, ironically, right? So we do have the capacity for love. We do have the capacity for connection. And even with people who have repeatedly harmed us, we can still love and miss them. So I want to normalize this. So I don't want you to be surprised if this comes up or to take it as a sign of like, I need to get back in contact with them because look how much I love and miss them. You're going to stay firm, right? So we're going to have to tell ourselves sometimes, okay, for the past 40 years or however long it's been, nothing has changed, right? That look at all the different things that I have done to try to change the situation, to try to change myself to be more pleasing to them, to try to just, keep them happy in whatever way, shape, or form that looked like. And nothing ever changed with their behavior. They've never gone to therapy. They've never done their own work. And they're the same person, and they've always been the same person. What I'm grieving is actually the loss and hopes and dreams of the family I wished I could have had. We don't actually grieve the one we had, right? So that's an important distinction. We're not grieving the actual family we had. We're grieving the one that we wished we could have had. So I'm going to normalize grief and loss around the holidays. It happens. It doesn't mean that it's a sign to go back and open the door for contact again and to let them back in your life. All right? So hopefully this little tip was helpful too. right, the next tip is related to hoovering. So if you haven't heard of this term, this is based on the old style Hoover vacuum, right? Hence my cute little image of the guy vacuuming. So hoovering is all about the narcissist or disordered person knowing that we are probably a little more emotionally vulnerable during the holidays. Heart might be a little bit more open to them. And so here they come back around trying to get back into contact with us, right? So that might come in the form of an email, text message, phone call, maybe even snail mail, something they send it, through the mail. But they might even be through actually another family member, for example. So be prepared for the various ways that they might reach out to you to try to hoover you back into a relationship with them, all right? So by knowing that this is a possibility, you could be more prepared for this. And so if it happens, you don't respond, right? So if you've already made the decision to be no contact, then you remain no contact. And so no matter what way they try to reach out, you don't respond. And if it's like, say, another family member, you might even have to let them know, hey, I'm not in contact with mom or dad anymore. I appreciate you reaching out, but yeah, please, there's no need to really contact me on their behalf anymore. We're not in contact, or I'm not in contact. And you can give as much detail or lack of detail that you want to. So it's not, don't over-explain yourself either. It's never good to over-explain ourselves. Sometimes the simplest explanation is the best. Like, mom or dad has really caused a lot of harm in my life, and so I've just had to go no contact for my own well-being. If you feel the need, or you're comfortable enough, you could say something like that. But yeah, don't open communications. Don't respond to any nasty messages. No response is a valid response. So reject any Hoover attempts by blocking phone numbers, blocking texts, blocking social media communication, and just not responding, basically. Number 4, building a family of choice. So this is kind of similar to what I mentioned a few slides ago about creating new family traditions, right? So if you don't have a built-in family, kind of like I do with my husband and my kids, maybe you have coworkers that are like family, quite frankly, or a best friend and their family who treats you like family, right? You probably, hopefully, if not, that's for a whole other video of how we try to build a new family of choice. But hopefully you have some people that you might be close enough with that they know that you're spending the holidays alone. And if you don't mind spending the holidays alone, that's, by all means, feel free to spend it alone. There's nothing wrong with that. But say, for example, you maybe have some coworkers, etc., that invite you to their Thanksgiving or their Christmas. By all means, this is where we can build a family of choice as opposed to people we're just automatically related to. And let's face it, a lot of times our coworkers, colleagues, friends, etc., neighbors actually do treat us better than our own families. One of the first years my husband and I were up here at our house up here in Flagstaff, Arizona, we had the neighbors across the street invite us over for Thanksgiving. Totally shocked us. And because we've never experienced such openness and kindness. And so we had a great time meeting them and sharing Thanksgiving with them. So yeah, again, build new traditions, build new connections. You can absolutely make the holidays meaningful again without spending time with your family of origin. Number 5, resist temptation to contact them at all costs, right? I don't care what you have to do to remind yourself that this is not a good time to get back into contact, but do not cave when it's the holidays. You will regret it. If you have to write yourself a list of like, okay, this is the reasons I'm not in contact, this is the potential reasons I might want to get back in contact, like a pros cons list, feel free. Most likely the cons list is going to be a lot longer, right? You do whatever you need to do to kind of remind yourself why you went no contact in the first place. So yeah, stay strong during the holidays. All right, number 6. This is how we handle intrusive questions from others that we don't feel like answering. I mean, inevitably, right? Holidays are typically about togetherness and family, making memories, but for us, they're not. And so we may really get a lot of uncomfortable and intrusive questions And so this really is my guide to kind of handle those types of intrusive and unwanted questions that are uncomfortable to answer. So, give yourself permission to not answer questions that you don't feel comfortable answering, right? You can give more vague answers, such as like, oh, I'm spending the holiday with a friend this year, or something kind of similar that kind of deflects where they stop asking you, or you could even turn the question back onto them. Like, once you say, oh, well, I'm spending the holidays with a friend this year. What about you? What do you guys do for the holidays, right? So you can kind of put it back into their court, so to speak, so that they stop really focusing in on you. Some other vague answers might be like, oh, I'm just spending this year relaxing, as opposed to last year, just self-care, trying to de-stress, things like, oh, well, my family lives far away, so I usually just spend it with friends. Or, thanks for asking. I'm not really close with my family though. So maybe you have a friend or somebody that you're closer to that you don't mind answering in a more honest way. For example, you could use that one. Otherwise, with somebody, that you don't feel open with, then yeah, don't bother. Use some of the more vague ones that I've shown here. You could say things like, oh, I'm having a Friendsgiving this year. But yeah, there's no need to go into a lot of details, so vague answers, deflect back onto them, ask them questions about their holidays, what they enjoy, stuff like that can be helpful for these type of questions. Number 7. So many of you probably have experienced this. If you're no contact with your family around the holidays, you might have other family members begin to ask you intrusive questions as well, or perhaps deliver messages on behalf of the narcissist or disordered family member. So we call these flying monkeys. And flying monkeys, this term originally comes from the Wizard of Oz, when the Wicked Witch sent the monkeys on her behalf to do her bidding. So that's where the term comes from. Yeah, so flying monkeys, they may be definitely on the narcissist side, and really doing their bidding and kind of out to get you as well. Or they may be kind of well-meaning friends and family who think that they're being helpful by playing intermediary, for example. But either way, not something that we enjoy getting if we're no contact. We kind of enjoy our privacy and don't really like having to explain why we're no contact, especially with other family members who are not exactly trustworthy. So this is where boundaries can come into play, right? What we're comfortable with, what we're not comfortable with. And some vague answers that you might give a flying monkey, for example, might be things like, oh, well, I appreciate your concern, but I really don't wish to talk about Mom and I's relationship with other members in the family. It's private. So something like that, where we're not going into detail, we're not over explaining, not oversharing. You don't want to do that with potentially abusive family members or family members that may take that information back to the narcissist and kind of fuel the drama. You don't want to do that. So remain, again, vague, kind of gray rock. Things like, oh, well, this is a private matter between Dad and I, but I appreciate your concern. Hope you're doing well. So yeah, you can do kind of neutral, vague responses like that. That way, you get to maintain politeness, for example, and not fuel any drama, but not give any personal details either that they can take back to the disordered family member. Yeah, you don't want that happening. So yeah, hope that was helpful too. All right, that concludes my 7 tips if you are in contact with narcissistic family or disordered family members during the holidays, and 7 tips if you are no contact with them. I hope you guys found the information helpful. Feel free to drop comments below if you have any other suggestions or ideas or want to share any experiences. I'm enjoying all of your feedback and your comments, and I really hope this video is helpful for you as you approach the holidays, right? Because they can be stressful. So yeah, please like, subscribe. Your support is growing my channel, and I so appreciate it. And everybody, I hope you have a safe and happy holiday season, and that you get time to yourself to rejuvenate and focus on yourself for once. All right. So everybody, take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.